The people that lived before 1973 had a challenge with communication around the globe. The only way you could make a telephone call was through a landline phone. A man named Martin Cooper, an American engineer, wanted to find a way to communicate more broadly. He stated that a cell phone ought to be an extension of a person. It ought to be with a person all the time. He then would go on to create the first mobile cell phone. This invention was a major turning point in history that expanded telecommunications around the globe.
You're living in the time period of the landline phone, and communication was different from how you communicate now. Back then, you could only communicate with people through a phone in your house or a payphone out in public that cost you money. These payphones were called landline phones. Landline phones in your house would connect to a wall, and you could only go as far as the little cord attached to the phone reached. Before the invention of a mobile telephone, emergency help could have been delayed. This could have resulted in less people getting the immediate treatment they needed to survive in any serious situation. People would have to run to the nearest store, house, or flag down cars to drive them to the nearest payphone to call for help. Some older phones had something called a party line where other people shared your connection. This allowed people that were not in the conversation to be able to hear what you were trying to say. You also had to crank the numbers on the phone to dial in a new phone number. After the invention of a mobile phone, people could call emergency services from the scene. If you wanted to communicate with people, and a phone call was not possible. Mail was the main option. In this case, you might have to wait days or weeks for a reply to your message. But then a man created the first mobile phone. But who was it? Why did he do it?
The first mobile telephone was made in 1973, and it evolved over the years. A man named Martin Cooper, an American engineer, wanted to invent a way to communicate more broadly. He then created the first mobile cell phone. This major turning point and change in communication was a huge step in the right direction for telecommunications around the globe. This also changed how medical emergencies were handled. With the first mobile phone device, you could only make and receive phone calls, but you could not receive text messages like we do today.
My very first mobile phone was when I was recruiting for the University of Pittsburgh, and I had a very big territory that went all the way into upstate New York. And my parents gave me a bag phone that I could plug into the cigarette lighter of my car if I needed to make an emergency call. But that was the only reason that I was ever to use it, because making a call on that phone was extremely expensive at the time. So any other calls that I would make would have to be made from a payphone or my hotel room phone that I stayed at when I was traveling. The first mobile phone that I was able to purchase on my own was when I had started working in a field sales job outside of college, and I needed to be able to make calls on the road. When I got my first cell phone, it gave me the ability to dial into my voicemail, check my messages while I was on the road in the privacy of my own car. I could have a more private conversation doing business where I didn't have to have others overhear me because I was in a public place.
Then SIM cards came out. The first phone with a SIM card was the Motorola International 3200, released in 1992. The SIM card lets the users store personal information like contacts and type of career information like AT&T, Verizon, etc. in the phone. The next big step up for mobile phones were devices with keyboards and interactive screens that allowed the user to use calendar functions, type and store notes, and send something called text messages. Example of these kinds of devices were the Nokia 9000i communicator made in 1996, the first phone to send a text message, and the BlackBerry device. Text messaging was a major advancement for mobile devices because it allowed people to send messages instead of making a phone call or sending a letter. Texting then made letters sent through the mail less popular, especially for the newer generation. Then the flip phone came into play. The flip phone was invented in 1996 and also has evolved. The flip phone was small enough to fit in your pocket, so it was easy to carry around. There was a small screen on one half, and on the other half were numbers to dial for a phone call. Then the iPhone came out. This was a small mobile device that could also fit in your pocket, with a bigger screen than the flip phone. This phone also introduced the user to apps. All of of these phones have many benefits, and there are a lot of short-term and long-term effects.
When the mobile phone was first introduced, it let more people connect and talk to other people on the go, like us in the car. This led to many more people getting the help they needed in any serious situation. And it also helped with spreading news across the world. You also did not have to be in your house to make phone calls anymore.
Before I had a mobile phone, when I was out in the field working, I would have to either drive back to my home office, I would have to stop at one of the office buildings that I was calling on customers in to find a payphone, and either dial a 1-800 number to check my voicemail, or if I was actually going to make a call, I would have to use a calling card, like a long distance calling card, so I have to put like a credit card number in to make a long distance call. When I got my cell phone, and it helped me to be, basically helped me be more efficient in what I did every single day, because I could do the work that I normally would have to stop and find a location to do while I was out working in the field. I could do it while I was in my car. I could do it in between appointments. I didn't have to go and find somewhere to go. It just made me able to work faster and not have to be tied to a landline, basically.
This invention led to other phones being made and evolved the way we communicate around the globe today. Nowadays, the long-term invention of the mobile phone had some positive and negative effects. Some good effects include the way that we can connect to people by just texting them, and we can see their faces even without being near them.
I got my first cell phone when I was 26 years old, and it was, I wouldn't say it was a life changer because I never had a cell phone beforehand or had the opportunity to communicate with people so freely. So as a result, when I got it, it was kind of a toy. It was easier to call friends, considering I was 26 years old, worked in Reading, PA, and had traveled from one building to the next on one side of town to the other. So I really didn't need it for my job, which is much different today, but it was to communicate with my friends. And when you're 26, a lot of the times you're just worried about what you're doing after work and when you're going to the gym and who you're going to meet up with and what the plans are. So that's what made it a game changer for me for communicating with friends. Not so much for the job or anything else that I use it for today, but as I became more accustomed to using it and more people had it, then it made it more of an actual necessity where it is today, where I start to get excited if I drive to work and find myself 3 miles down the road and I don't have my cell phone. Not that it changed anything, but now I'm getting anxious and I have to go back and get my cell phone because it's like an extra appendage.
Another positive long-term effect is the type of apps people have on modern phones. These apps could show you how to speak different languages, take videos, take notes, make reminders, and listen to music. But with everything, there are some disadvantages to having nice things. Some of these include being addicted to a device. Some people spend too much time on their phone and it is not healthy for them. This can lead to bad or worsening eyesight and sleep deprivation. Another long-term effect is that people are almost always available because they have their phones around them. And some people constantly check their phones for updates and text. This is not good because it could lead you towards anxiety or overthinking, in the fact that you just sent a text message and someone is not answering it right away. For some people that could be fine, but for others it could cause anxiety just because they need an answer quickly. And they're so used to some people always getting right back to them or checking their phone.
Overall, the invention of the mobile phone has changed the way we communicate. Before the invention, people had to talk through a landline phone or a telephone booth. Then, Martin Cooper invented the first mobile phone, and it changed the way we communicate around the world. This major turning point in history expanded telecommunications around the globe and has evolved throughout the years. From a landline phone that you had to be in your house for and was limited to a small wire you can only go so far with, all the way to a skinny smartphone with apps, a camera, and a way to call people. Sorry, I'm doing something right now.